Have you ever looked at the person you love and realized they're not yours anymore? Not because they said it, but because something inside them had already left. If you've ever felt that silent shift, where routines replace affection and presence replaces connection, this story will stay with you. And if you believe quiet women don't notice betrayal, wait until you see what Neera did without raising her voice. Before we begin, if this story touches something real inside you, leave a comment, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes in strength without noise. Neera Colden believed in calm, not because life had always been gentle, but because she had learned. That peace was something you built, not something you waited for. At 34, she lived in a modern, sunlit condo near Biscayne Bay. Minimalist in design, quiet in atmosphere. Each room reflected her, clean, ordered, softly intentional. She worked as a luxury travel consultant, managing exclusive retreats and romantic getaways. For the ultra-wealthy, people who wanted curated peace delivered on a silver schedule, Neera was good at that. She had a reputation in Miami's discreet circles. Clients trusted her because she never overpromised, never fumbled details, and never inserted herself into the lives she managed. She was the woman behind the curtain, unseen but essential. Her husband, Colvin Wraith, moved in louder circles. He was a media strategist who always wanted more. More reach, more influence, more attention. He'd started as a local producer, climbed his way through networking and careful charm, and now worked mid-level in one of the city's louder media conglomerates. He wasn't quite famous, but he acted like he might be soon. Their marriage looked stable from the outside. No shouting, no scandals, but inside it had grown. Tired. They had been married 6 years. The early days had warmth, late-night tacos, shared playlists, whispered dreams, but that version of Colvin had slowly faded. These days, his compliments were rare, his schedule unpredictable. He said it was work. She didn't argue. Neera wasn't confrontational. She didn't believe love was supposed to be a courtroom. But even in her silence, she noticed. She noticed when he came home without checking if she was still awake. She noticed when his touch became routine, not affectionate. She noticed when his gaze stopped lingering and his phone started glowing at dinner. But Neera didn't pry, not because she didn't care, but because she didn't want to dig for something that was already gone. Still, she kept trying. Quiet gestures, thoughtful dinners, new ideas for weekend escapes. Colvin always nodded, but rarely followed through. Their last trip together had been a year ago, a week in Sonoma. Even then, he'd spent half the time on calls. Now, most evenings passed with him on the balcony, phone to his ear. Neera would fold laundry, read emails, and sip jasmine tea she barely tasted. Sometimes, she'd glance at the door, wondering if it would open with a new version of him. It never did. The only place Neera still felt alive was at work. She loved the structure, the pace, the satisfaction of pulling together impossible requests. She had once arranged a sunrise proposal at Machu Picchu with 5 hours' notice. Another time, she chartered an underwater suite in the Maldives for a client's 20-minute apology gesture. Her job was absurdly demanding, but it gave her purpose. One Tuesday morning, her assistant Mariel slid a file across her desk. "New VIP," Mariel said. "Wants full privacy, no media leaks, no staff interaction outside of logistics. High level." "We're talking NDA level." Neera arched a brow, flipping the file open. Ronan Verace. She recognized the name. A tech billionaire from the Pacific Northwest, rarely photographed, no social scandals, no overexposure. His companies were known for solving real-world problems without boasting about it. He was bringing his family down for a month-long coastal retreat. No events, no press, just quiet, private downtime. And he wanted it perfect. Neera read the request twice. It wasn't urgent, but it was delicate. She nodded once. "I'll take it." That afternoon, she had lunch alone at Mirasol, a beachfront restaurant she sometimes used for client meetings. She liked their policy of no indoor music before 4 p.m. She could hear herself think there. She sat on the second floor, a shaded terrace with a view of the ocean. The staff knew her. brought her lime water without asking. Nira reviewed client itineraries, while the ocean breeze combed gently through her curls. Everything felt the same, ordinary, peaceful, until it wasn't. A soft laugh caught her attention. Familiar, but not hers. She glanced down, and there he was. Colvin, seated at a ground floor table just below her, back facing her, but there was no mistaking his posture. The woman with him was young, maybe mid-20s. Blonde bob, short ivory dress, bare shoulders. She laughed too loudly, too often. Nira watched for just a moment. She expected a business meeting, an intern, a sponsor, but Colvin leaned in, close. Their fingers touched as they reached for the same glass. And then, he brushed her chin with 2 fingers. Nira's heart didn't race. Her breath didn't stop. But her spine straightened. She didn't move. She didn't cry. She simply watched her husband touch another woman like she no longer existed. She didn't need more proof, and she didn't want a scene. She closed her folder, took a last sip of her lime water, and stood up without looking back. She left the restaurant without letting her shadow reach him. Nira walked out of the restaurant with slow, steady steps. She didn't rush. She didn't stumble. To anyone watching, she looked like a woman who had simply finished her lunch and was heading back to work. Inside, something was cracking. Not loudly, not violently, but in a way she couldn't pretend away. The afternoon sun sat high above Miami, warm and bright. But Nira felt none of it. She crossed the street, reached her car, placed her keys gently in the tray beside the gear shift, and sat there in silence. Her breathing stayed even. Her hands didn't shake. Her mind didn't spiral. Instead, a single thought stood still in the center of everything. He didn't hesitate, not once. Not when he touched the woman. Not when he let her laugh into the space that once belonged to Nira. Not even when he reached for the same glass, the kind of small, intimate gesture reserved for people who shared private understandings. She replayed it only once, only enough to be sure she had seen what she had seen. Then she stopped. Nira wasn't the type to dig into pain. She respected it quietly and moved around it with grace. She placed both palms on the steering wheel and whispered, more to herself than to the world, "So this is where we are." No tears followed. No anger rose. Just clarity. At home that evening, the condo was empty. Colvin had texted an hour earlier, late night, "Don't wait up." Nira stared at the message. Her thumb hovered for a moment. 1,000 replies existed. She chose none. She set the phone down, changed into soft loungewear, and made herself a cup of tea. She sat by the window overlooking the bay, watching the boats drift by as if they were in a different life entirely. A part of her wanted to ask why. Why the laughter with someone else? Why the touch? Why the ease? But she already knew the danger of forcing a confession from someone who didn't value honesty. So she said nothing. Silence wasn't surrender. It was protection. And in that silence, she made her first shift. She didn't fold his shirts the way she normally did, smoothing the sleeves the way he liked. She didn't send him a reminder about his morning shoot. She didn't warm food for him and store it in the fridge with little notes. She let the house sit. Let the marriage float. Let the distance speak for itself. The days that followed were a soft unraveling of routine. Nira woke early as usual, but she didn't check the bedroom next door to make sure his suits were steamed. She didn't review his schedule. She didn't leave coffee on the counter for him before he rushed off to work. If he noticed, he didn't say. He moved through the condo as though her efforts had always been invisible, so their absence meant nothing. That realization didn't hurt. It simply confirmed what she already understood. Work became her anchor. She threw herself into planning Ronan Verace's retreat with a precision she hadn't tapped into in months. The more she read about the family, the more she felt an unexpected respect. Ronan kept his world quiet, private, structured, much like she did. His retreat requirements were specific. He wanted a remote coastal home with high walls, private docks, discreet staff rotations. and enough open land for his 2 children to roam without public eyes. It wasn't a simple booking. It was a puzzle. She liked puzzles. By the 3rd day, she had secured the perfect location, finalized 3 separate security agreements, and curated a custom itinerary tailored to each Verus family member. Her supervisor, Mariel, stopped by her desk. "You look focused," she said. Nira glanced up. Her voice stayed steady. "It's a large project." "It's more than that," Mariel added. "You're moving different lately. More certain." Nira didn't answer. Some truths didn't need words. 3 weeks passed. Not once did Nira bring up what she saw. Not once did she question Colvin. Not once did she allow her life to be defined by his choices. Silence lived between them, but not the tense kind. This was a silence that came from detachment. On the surface, they still shared space, still said good morning, still existed in the same condo, but the closeness was gone, and he seemed to enjoy pretending nothing had changed. Maybe it made him feel safe. Maybe he thought she would never leave. Maybe he believed her softness meant weakness. He was wrong on all 3. Then came the day of the mixer. Nira didn't want to attend, but she had to. Ronan Verus would be there, and she needed to confirm several details regarding his retreat. She stood before her mirror, slipping into a sleek navy gown. The neckline was simple. The fabric hugged her shape in a quiet, confident line. It wasn't meant to attract attention. It was meant to reflect control. Her hair fell in soft waves. Her makeup remained light, a woman who didn't need loudness to be seen. She grabbed her small black clutch and headed out. The mixer took place at a rooftop ballroom overlooking Biscayne Bay. Glass walls, soft lighting, a jazz trio played in the corner. The kind of setting where everything looked perfect, even when the people inside weren't. Nira checked in with the event coordinator, offered polite greetings, then moved toward the bar for a sparkling water. She wasn't here to socialize. She wasn't here to be noticed. She was here to work, until she wasn't. Because the moment she stepped aside to let a server pass, she saw him, Colvin, entering through the balcony doors, in a tailored suit, smiling, relaxed, and on his arm, the same woman from the restaurant. The ivory dress was gone. Tonight, she wore red. Red that demanded attention. Red that didn't hide her confidence. Red that matched the lipstick smeared across her smile. Nira felt her chest still, not tighten, not break, just still. Colvin saw her. His eyes flicked in her direction. No shock, no guilt, no apology. He simply blinked and looked away, as though she were just another guest in the room. Another face, another nothing. Nira didn't chase his gaze, didn't force a confrontation, didn't let her posture shift. She held her glass, breathed once, and kept standing. Stillness was her armor. Inside, the truth settled more fully. This wasn't a slip. This wasn't a weakness. This wasn't an affair caught by accident. This was a man living a double life so comfortably that seeing his wife and mistress in the same room didn't threaten him at all. It told her everything she needed to know. She was still processing it when a familiar presence drew near. A quiet step, a measured breath, a steady calm that didn't belong to this noisy room. Ronan Verus. She didn't see him approach. She felt him. He stood at her side without announcing himself. His gaze followed hers, tracing the line toward Colvin and the woman in red. He didn't ask. He didn't pry. He didn't tilt his head in pity. He simply observed. Then, in a low voice that touched the air between them, he said, "You don't owe anyone silence tonight." Nira didn't look at him. She didn't trust her voice. She didn't trust her heart not to give something away. He placed a gentle hand at her lower back, light enough not to claim space, firm enough to remind her she wasn't standing alone. "Let me stand next to you," he added. No pressure, no intention. Just presence. Nira didn't move away. She didn't step closer. She simply allowed him to stay beside her. And for the first time that night, she didn't feel small. Colvin didn't mention the gala the next morning. He moved through the condo like usual, slipping on his dress shirt while checking headlines, sipping the black coffee she didn't make, and tapping out emails from the kitchen stool. If he noticed the silence between them had deepened, he didn't show it. But Neera had noticed something. Him, looking twice in the mirror. Him, standing longer than usual in the hallway before leaving. Him, pausing at the door like he wanted to say something. But whatever it was, it never came out. And Neera didn't ask. She didn't have the energy to drag truths out of a man who now lived comfortably in two worlds. He hadn't offered her anything. Not an apology, not an excuse. Not even the decency of pretending. He had simply walked through the evening like she was invisible and brought another woman into a room where his wife stood, alone. It wasn't the affair that stung most. It was the dismissal. That morning, she stripped their bed and changed the sheets. Not out of habit, but because it marked something final. She folded the old ones, placed them in a separate linen basket, and left them in the hallway closet. She would no longer share anything intimate with him. Not a bed, not a scent, not a softness. Let the mistress wash his pillowcases now. Neera began moving through her life like a woman who no longer waited. She didn't rush into decisions. She didn't call lawyers. She didn't cry to friends. She simply started collecting herself back from every place she'd left herself behind. That began with work. The office had always been a safe space. She arrived earlier than usual now, settled into her desk with quiet purpose. No small talk. No distractions, just her planner, and the silence of being in full control of something. That week, she began assembling the full logistics plan for the Everyt family retreat. Ronan hadn't spoken to her since the event, but his team had followed up, requesting discretion at every level. She appreciated that. In a world filled with noise, his team operated with precision and privacy. On Thursday afternoon, Neera had her first direct call with Ronan Everyt. He didn't introduce himself with flair. He simply said, "Neera, this is Ronan." His voice was calm, deep, clear, no performance. "I reviewed the draft locations. The third one looks promising. Can we secure that without triggering press attention?" She already had the answer. Yes. There's a private entrance from the south that bypasses the main road. Staff live on site and sign NDAs every quarter. It's owned by a discreet trust, so there's no real estate record attached to your name. There was a slight pause. "Impressive," he said. "Most consultants leave that detail to the client. I try not to." Another pause. Then a slight shift in tone. "Do you always work like this?" "Like what?" "Quiet, exact, no excess." She didn't answer right away. "I don't like noise," she finally said. "Neither do I." Then he thanked her and hung up. The conversation stayed with her, not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. In just a few sentences, she felt more seen than she had in years. It wasn't attraction. It wasn't flirtation. It was recognition. Ronan noticed her the way only someone who had also lived in silence could. She didn't try to read into it. But she didn't ignore it either. By the end of the week, Neera had restructured the entire retreat itinerary. Instead of the usual bland luxury experiences, she incorporated intentional pauses, quiet mountain, mornings, long private meals, and hand-picked staff who knew how to disappear into the background. She wasn't just organizing a trip. She was curating peace. When Mariel peeked into her office Friday afternoon, she raised her eyebrows. "You working overtime for this guy?" Neera didn't look up from her laptop. "I'm working like someone who has clarity." Mariel didn't press. She didn't need to. Colvin noticed the shift 2 weeks in. He came home one night with his usual mix of fake casual and real arrogance. "You've been busy lately." Neera closed her laptop without looking at him. "Work's demanding right now." He hovered a little too long in the kitchen. Poured himself a drink. Waited for her to engage. She didn't. She stood, grabbed her mug, and walked into the guest room, the room she now used as her own. Colvin called after her. "We should talk sometime." Neera turned her head. "About what?" "You know what I mean." "No," she said. "I don't think I do." And she closed the door gently. What Colvin didn't understand What he may never understand was that Neera's silence wasn't passive. It was strategic. She didn't scream because she didn't need to. He had taken something from her without apology. But what he didn't realize was that she had stopped offering herself long before that. The next time she heard from Ronan directly, it wasn't through a call. It was a handwritten note. A single envelope placed in her office mailbox, no name on the front. Inside was a card, one line, printed in a steady, slanted script. When silence is respected, it becomes strength. Beneath it, a single initial, R. She stared at it for a long time. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't performative. It was acknowledgement. And for a woman who had been dismissed, overlooked and minimized in her own marriage, acknowledgement felt like warmth. That night, Neera stood on her balcony and watched the moon slip between passing clouds. The city below still pulsed with noise, cars, music, laughter, but her space remained quiet. She held the note in her hand and whispered to herself, "I'm still here, not broken, not erased, not replaced. Still here, still whole." The next morning, she wore her favorite black dress shirt to work. She didn't do it for anyone. She didn't need to. She had finally remembered what it felt like to dress for her own reflection. And that was the most dangerous thing a betrayed woman could do, return to herself. The first time Ronan Varas saw Neera in person after the gala, it wasn't planned. He walked into the main office unannounced, a move his status allowed. There were no handlers, no assistants announcing his arrival, just him, dressed in a dark collarless shirt and tailored pants. Clean, understated, the way he always moved, powerful without needing to say it. Neera looked up from her desk when he stepped in. Their eyes met, no rush, no awkward pause. "Neera," he said. "Mr. Varas, you're the only person who calls me that," he noted with a faint smile. She stood up, still calm. "Everyone else is trying to impress you." He tilted his head. "And you?" "I'm trying to deliver results." He nodded once. That quiet approval again. "I need 10 minutes, he said. "Not in a meeting room. Just somewhere not loud." Neera motioned toward a side terrace. Floor-to-ceiling glass, 2 chairs, and no one ever used it. She didn't ask what he needed. She simply grabbed her planner and followed. They sat down. He didn't speak right away. She didn't fill the silence. When he finally looked at her, his words were deliberate. "I've been to 10 cities this month. I've spoken to people I didn't need to, shaken hands I didn't want to, and I still think about that night." Neera didn't move. He continued, "Not because of what happened, but because of how you stood." She took a slow breath. "I wasn't trying to be brave. You weren't trying to be anything. That's what stayed with me." There was no flirtation in his voice, no manipulation, just truth. "I didn't plan to speak that night," she admitted. "But you did, only because you looked like someone who had spent too long protecting people who didn't deserve it." Her eyes met his. He didn't flinch. Ronan didn't stay long. He reviewed final updates on the retreat itinerary, signed a confidentiality addendum, and handed her a flash drive. As he stood to leave, he turned back. "I'm not asking for anything from you. I know," she said. "I just don't want to be one more person who took from you in silence." He left without waiting for a reply. Neera stood in the quiet of the terrace for a long time after. Not because she was overwhelmed, but because for the first time in years, someone had said something, and meant it. That night, Colvin tried to start a conversation over dinner. He brought home takeout, sushi from the place she used to love. He set the table, poured wine, and waited like it was 2019 again. Neera sat across from him in silence. "You've been quiet," he said carefully. "I have." He looked at her, waiting. "I'm not going to lie to you, Neera. Things have been complicated." She didn't blink. With her, he hesitated. "It's not like that." She raised an eyebrow. "You brought her to an event you knew I'd attend. It wasn't planned that way." Neera didn't argue. She didn't ask for details. Instead, she asked a simple question. "Are you in love with her?" Colvin's jaw shifted. "I don't know." She stood. "I do." He looked up. "So, that's it?" "No, That was it a long time ago. I'm just acknowledging it now. She placed her napkin down, pushed her chair in, and turned. I'm not angry, Colvin. I'm not hurt anymore either. I'm just done performing normal with someone who doesn't value me. He didn't follow her, didn't fight, didn't confess. He just stayed in his chair, staring at the glass in front of him. That silence confirmed everything. The next morning, Neera emailed the building manager, requested a lock change for the condo, requested a parking reassignment, requested her name be removed from the shared tenant record. By noon, she had found a 2-bedroom apartment closer to her office. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't waterfront, but it was hers. She moved out the following weekend. Colvin didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up, which only made her decision feel more right. The day after she moved in, a delivery arrived. No sender name. Inside was a slim black box, tied with matte silk ribbon. She opened it slowly. Inside, a single silver key. Sleek, clean, engraved with one word, North Point. Beneath it, a folded note. In case you ever need your own escape. No expectations, just space. Neera didn't smile. But she did close her eyes for a moment and let herself feel considered. North Point was one of the locations she had recommended to Ronan. A secluded oceanfront property, minimalist in architecture, all glass and stone and silence. The kind of place you entered and felt your breath adjust to. She hadn't expected him to buy it. She hadn't expected him to give her access. She hadn't expected anything. Which is what made the gesture so powerful. She placed the key on her desk, didn't use it, didn't ignore it either. It stayed there, untouched but present, much like Ronan. At work, her title quietly changed. From consultant to executive coordinator of high-value client operations. Mariel laughed when she saw the update. You skipped 3 internal tiers. Neera shrugged. Maybe someone thought silence was a skill. Mariel grinned. Or maybe someone just finally saw what the rest of us have known for years. By the 3rd month, Neera had her own small team. She mentored young consultants with grace, always redirecting attention away from herself. Clients respected her, vendors trusted her, and most importantly, she never raised her voice to be heard. Her story was no longer one of betrayal. It had become one of return. Return to self, to stillness, to strength. She didn't chase revenge. She didn't post online, didn't drop hints, didn't expose Colvin. But her life became the loudest answer. Have you ever stayed silent, not because you were weak, but because you knew your worth? If Neera's quiet strength spoke to you, tell us in the comments. And if you've ever walked away from someone without shouting, hit that like button. You never know who might need this story right now. Share it. And don't forget to subscribe for more quiet justice stories that stay with you. 3 days after the lock change and her quiet move out, Neera received the official invite. A formal, printed envelope. No return address. The kind of heavyweight card stock that only existed in curated circles. Inside, embossed in clean lettering, Verace Family Fundraiser, private, rooftop mixer location, Biscayne Bay Tower dress code, formal. Guest access, strictly limited. There was a handwritten line at the bottom. You don't have to show up, but if you do, I'll be there. Neera placed the card on her desk and stared at it. She wasn't afraid to see him again. She was afraid of what it meant to show up to something that wasn't about work. Because if she did, it would no longer be professional. It would be personal, and she hadn't made space for that yet. That night, she did something unexpected. She opened her old photo albums. Not digital ones, the real kind. Bound pages, faded corners. She flipped through photos of their wedding, hers and Colvin's. He looked proud back then, not wildly in love, but present, engaged. She remembered the way he held her hand during their first dance, the way he whispered, "Let's build something slow and good." The way she believed him. They didn't get there. She closed the album, slid it into a drawer, and didn't look back. The next morning, she RSVP'd. Confirmed. One guest. Ms. Neera Colden. She told no one, not Mariel, not her team, not even the new assistant who'd been quietly observing her for weeks. This was hers, and if she was going to show up, she'd do it on her terms. Ronan sent the dress 2 days later. No note, no pressure. It arrived in a black box, folded in tissue paper, velvet, soft, tailored to her exact frame. She hadn't told him her size, which meant someone had noticed. She didn't panic, didn't overthink, didn't ask who told him. She just stood in front of the mirror, held the dress up to her body, and allowed herself to see the woman she'd become. Not Colvin's wife, not the betrayed one, not the silent sufferer, just Nera, wearing her own name again. The night of the event came quickly. Biscayne Bay Tower glowed like glass fire. Guards flanked the entrance. No press, no photographers, just those who belonged. Nera stepped out of the private car and moved through the lobby in silence. She wore the velvet dress, minimal jewelry, hair swept back, eyes steady. When she entered the rooftop, conversations softened, not because she was loud, but because she carried something certain. She found the corner of the rooftop and stayed there, not hiding, but choosing peace. People greeted her politely. Some nodded with recognition. A few whispered. She didn't force a smile. She didn't try to belong. She just existed. Then she felt it. That quiet shift in the air. The way everything slowed around her. Ronan had entered. He didn't walk toward her immediately. He paused, acknowledged a few donors, shook hands, nodded to his brother. Then his eyes met hers, and he crossed the room, every step without hesitation, every breath measured. But his expression didn't scream for attention. It said, "I'm here." That was enough. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice low. "I almost didn't. I would have understood." She tilted her head. "But you would have noticed." He gave the faintest smile. "Yes." She looked around. "You have a presence." "I don't need to be loud," he replied. "Just clear." They stood in silence, and then, in a gesture so natural it didn't feel forced, he extended his hand. She took it, and they walked together toward the far balcony. There was no performance, no sudden declarations, no dramatic glances, just two people walking in sync. Two people who had learned how to move through noise without letting it stain them. They reached the edge of the rooftop. Below them, the water shimmered under city light. Nera rested her hands on the glass railing. Ronan stood beside her, close but not crowding. "Do you miss him?" he asked softly. She didn't flinch. She didn't lie. "I miss who I thought he was." He nodded slowly. "That version never existed," she added. And he said nothing, because he knew nothing needed to be said. They stayed outside for a long time. Inside, people laughed. Music played. Deals were hinted at. Drinks poured. Egos inflated. But Nera and Ronan stood in stillness, watching the night without needing to shape it. No one interrupted. No one asked if they were together. No one dared. Because some pairings say everything without a word. When it was time to leave, Ronan walked her to the elevator. At the door, he looked at her directly. "You walked into a room where you were once humiliated." "I wasn't humiliated," she corrected him. He was. "I just happened to witness it." He looked at her with something deeper than admiration. "You've rewritten your own story, Nera." "Not yet," she said quietly. "But I'm holding the pen now." They didn't hug. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. When the elevator closed, she was still standing with her shoulders square, her gaze forward. And this time, she didn't feel alone. The elevator ride down was slow, smooth, and quiet. Nera stood alone inside it, arms by her sides, no phone in hand, no nerves twisting in her stomach. There was no need to rehearse anything anymore. She wasn't exiting something. She was returning to herself. At the lobby, her car was already waiting. A private black sedan, engine low, driver discreet. The kind of quiet efficiency Ronan's team arranged when they didn't want attention. She stepped inside. As the door closed, the driver turned slightly. We've been instructed to take you home unless you'd like to reroute. Nira raised a brow. Reroute? Where? The driver didn't look back. North Point. Her heart paused, but only for a second. North Point, the villa. The key he'd sent. The one she hadn't used. The one she had left untouched in her desk drawer, like a promise she wasn't sure she had the right to redeem. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked out at the streets of Miami, still lit and pulsing with weekend energy. Neon signs, rooftop bars, sidewalk laughter. The kind of life she used to chase because it gave her marriage the illusion of motion. Now? She exhaled, steady and quiet. North Point. The ride took 40 minutes. By the time they arrived, the roads had emptied. The gated entrance opened without a sound. The tires barely crunched the driveway gravel. When the car stopped, she stepped out alone. No staff, no housekeeper, just stillness. The villa wasn't massive. It wasn't meant to impress. It was clean-lined, framed in glass and weathered stone. It faced the ocean directly, with no other property in sight. The night air carried a hint of salt and jasmine. The front door unlocked with the key she'd nearly forgotten. When she stepped inside, the house lit itself gently. Warm light, soft shadows, no cameras, no messages, no voices. Just a folded white blanket on the couch, a fire already laid in the hearth, unlit. A kitchen stocked with small intentional touches, 2 mugs, almond milk, honey, lemon, and on the marble island, a note. Stay as long as you need. No pressure, no expectation, only presence. Nira didn't unpack. She didn't check her phone. She didn't text anyone. She changed into a long cotton robe and walked barefoot across the living room to the terrace. The ocean was black and wide. Waves rolled in rhythm, the kind of music the world forgot to appreciate. She sat down in the lounge chair and tucked her legs under her. And there, under the open night, she cried. Not hard, not desperate, not broken. Just quiet tears for the version of herself she'd carried for too long. The one who had waited, the one who had bent, the one who had poured herself into someone who never held her back fully. And then, the tears stopped. Just like that. She wiped her face, took a long breath, and sat still, whole. She didn't sleep right away. She lit the fireplace, made herself tea, read a few pages of a book she didn't remember packing. And then, close to 3 a.m., there was a soft knock at the front door. No security call, no message, just a knock. She didn't startle. She stood calmly and walked across the open floor. When she opened the door, Ronan stood on the stone steps. No umbrella, no bag, just him, in a dark wool coat, eyes steady. I told myself I wouldn't come, he said quietly. She didn't move. I didn't want to invade your space, but I drove anyway. Just in case. In case of what? He exhaled slowly. In case you wanted someone to sit across from you and not ask for anything. She studied him. No charm, no push, just truth. She stepped aside. Then don't stand out there. Come sit. He removed his coat. No suit beneath it. Just a grey pullover and dark slacks. He didn't look like the man in boardrooms or magazine profiles. He looked like someone who'd waited years to just breathe. They sat across from each other by the fire. The logs crackled softly. No one spoke for a while. Nira looked into the flame and finally broke the silence. You're the first man I've known who doesn't interrupt silence. He nodded once. You've earned silence that's safe. A long pause followed. Not awkward, not charged, just warm. Why did you come? She asked. Because I didn't want to wake up wondering if I should have. She looked at him. That's not romantic. It's not supposed to be. They sat there for a long time, just listening to the fire. She finally said, You were right at the mixer. He tilted his head slightly. I've spent years protecting people who never noticed. And I thought if I stayed loyal, that would mean something. But loyalty to someone who refuses to see you is self-erasure. Ronan didn't interrupt. Nira turned toward him. I'm not broken. I never thought you were. I'm not fragile. He looked her in the eyes. You're the strongest person I've met. Another quiet passed between them. And then, with no performance, no rush, no agenda, she leaned forward and rested her hand on his. Nothing more. He didn't grip it, didn't pull her closer. He just let it sit there, quiet and welcome. They didn't kiss that night, didn't fall into some cinematic embrace. They simply sat there, fire warming the room, hands touching lightly, no words trying to fill what peace already occupied. And when Ronan finally stood to leave, she walked him to the door. "Will you come back?" she asked. "I'll wait for your call," he said. She nodded. And for the first time in years, Neera didn't feel like she'd been left behind. She felt respected. 3 days passed before Neera returned to the city, not because she had to, because she was ready. North Point had held her without asking anything in return. It had become more than a villa. It had become a space where no one needed her to explain who she was, where no masks followed her to breakfast, where her breath wasn't tied to someone else's mood. She packed lightly, left the space untouched, just as it was when she arrived, except for one thing. She left a note on the marble counter. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like someone's mistake. No name, no number, no directions, just her voice. Simple and true. Back in Miami, the air felt warmer, not because the weather had changed, but because she had. Her apartment now reflected her in new ways. The furniture didn't match perfectly. Her kitchen shelves weren't fully organized. A few unpacked boxes still sat by the hallway. But the space carried something Colvin's condo never had: freedom. She no longer checked her phone out of habit, no longer moved through routines that served no one, no longer waited for a version of love that didn't know how to stand still. Instead, she returned to her work, to her space, to her name. That week, Ronan didn't call. Neera didn't expect him to. She knew silence could be respect too. But on Thursday morning, a courier delivered something to her office, simple and wrapped in brown paper. Inside, a framed photo, black and white, elegant, 2 hands resting on a glass table, one slender with a plain ring, one broader holding a pen. It was their photo, the one from the fundraiser, the one she never took but someone did, the one where nothing happened, but everything changed. There was no note, just the photo, framed, acknowledged. She placed it on her office shelf, not hidden, not flaunted, present. Later that evening, she walked to a nearby cafe after work, alone, not lonely. She ordered ginger tea, sat by the window, and allowed herself to feel full of choices, of clarity, of space. Across the street, a familiar figure caught her eye. Colvin. He wasn't holding anyone's hand this time, wasn't laughing, wasn't with the woman in red. He looked smaller, like the air had gone out of him. He stood at a corner newsstand, flipping through a magazine he didn't buy, the way people do when they're pretending to be okay. He didn't see her, and Neera made no move to wave, no smile, no nod. She simply sipped her tea and turned her gaze back inside. Let him exist in a world she no longer belonged to. That weekend, she went to the marina, not because she had a plan, but because the ocean always reminded her that stillness could be powerful. She stood by the railing, watching boats pull in and out, her hair loose in the wind. And then, behind her, footsteps. She turned. Ronan. No security, no sunglasses, no urgency. He walked up beside her like they'd planned it, like she'd been waiting for him. "I thought you'd still be at North Point," he said. "I left. I saw." "How?" "I checked the fire logs remotely." She smiled. "Just a little. That's not very private of you. I only check once a day, in case the place burns down. In case I burn it down." He gave a rare grin. "In case you never come back." She looked at him. "I might. One day." "I hope you do." They walked along the marina path, quietly, no music, no interruptions. Neera asked, "Have you ever been married?" "No." "Why not?" because I never wanted to be the reason someone became smaller. She stopped walking, looked at him. I was married to someone who never noticed when I disappeared. Ronan didn't flinch. But now, she added, I'm reappearing. And he said the only thing that made sense, I know. They sat on a bench under a palm, watching the boats. She turned to him. You keep showing up. I don't chase people, but I return when I'm invited. I never invited you. He met her eyes. You didn't need to. A pause. I needed you to notice me, she said softly. Not because I was impressive, but because I was present. I noticed the moment you didn't try. Her breath caught, not from nerves, but recognition. You made me feel seen, Neera, and you never had to ask for it. She didn't reply right away. Instead, she did something simple. She reached for his hand. Not fast, not bold, but gently. And when her fingers slid between his, he didn't move. He just held it, softly. No performance, no pressure, just presence. They sat like that until the sun started to sink. And in the slow golden light, two people who had lived through noise learned how to be quiet together. And in that quiet, something finally began. On Monday morning, Neera arrived at the office before sunrise. The city was still blue with sleep, and the windows of the building glowed faintly with power-saving lights. She liked arriving before the world stirred. It reminded her she didn't have to chase anyone. She could arrive on her own time, in her own way, and still move mountains. Her team had grown by then. 2 junior consultants and an admin assistant reported directly to her. All 3 worked well. Quiet, precise, intentional. She chose them not by resume polish, but by how they moved when no one was watching. That morning, Mariel knocked on her glass door. You have a guest in the downstairs lounge. Neera blinked once. A client? Didn't say. But he's not loud. Just said he'd wait until you had time. Neera didn't ask who. She already knew. Ronan stood near the window in the lounge, hands in his pockets, gaze fixed on the skyline. He wasn't dressed like a billionaire this time. Charcoal slacks, white shirt, no tie. Sleeves rolled, collar open. He looked easy, but still composed. She stepped in. He turned immediately. You weren't at North Point this weekend. I needed to be here. He nodded, like that answer made perfect sense. Coffee? She offered. No, I'm not staying long. She tilted her head, waiting. Ronan pulled something from his coat pocket. It was a phone. Her phone, her backup device, the one she had left in North Point's study drawer. She hadn't realized it was missing. It hadn't buzzed in weeks. I thought it might matter. She smiled slightly, taking it. Thank you. A pause. You don't have to keep returning things to me, she said gently. He looked at her, steady. I'm not. I'm just giving them back until you realize none of it was ever lost. They sat for a few minutes. No agenda. No rush. Neera broke the silence. I've been thinking about the woman I used to be, the one who clung to routines like they were proof of love, who thought quiet meant loyal and loyal meant valuable. And now I know silence can mean survival too. He nodded once. She leaned back in her chair. Did you come for a reason? Or was this one of your middle-of-the-night drives? He gave a small smile. Both. She waited. I'm leaving the city for a while, he said. Business mostly. Europe. A few months. Neera's breath stilled, not in fear, but in expectation. Will you be back? She asked. His answer came without pause. Yes. But I didn't want to go without saying something. She raised an eyebrow. And what's that? He looked at her carefully. That I don't expect anything from you, but I respect everything you've done. You didn't burn down the house. You walked out and built a better one. That matters. Her throat tightened. Ronan. He stood then. I'll keep in touch, not because I expect you to wait, but because people like you, they only happen once, and I'd rather stay connected than pretend you didn't shift something in me. She stood too. Not out of formality, but because she didn't want to be sitting when he left. As he stepped toward the door, she touched his forearm gently. "Come back when you're ready to sit still," she said. He looked at her like she had handed him something sacred. "I will." Then, he was gone. Nera stood there long after the door closed, not empty, not sad, not waiting, just still. The next few weeks moved fast. New clients, new city openings, a contract renewal with a global luxury firm that placed her team at the top of the regional chart. She didn't post about it, didn't celebrate loudly, didn't change her bio. She simply sent her team home early that Friday, walked along the bay for an hour, and made herself a quiet dinner of roasted vegetables and rice. She no longer measured success by applause. She measured it by peace. One evening, she opened the backup phone. Ronan had left only one message, a voice note, short, under 10 seconds. His voice, soft and grounded. "You gave me a reason to think slower. I'm grateful." No name, no timestamp, no pressure. She saved it, not because she was holding on to him, but because it reminded her of what it felt like to be seen. 2 months later, an envelope arrived. From Paris, no return address. Inside, a folded itinerary. Business class flight. Weekend stay at a property Nera had once curated. All expenses cleared. No message. She didn't book it right away. Instead, she sat with it. Thought about what it meant to go towards someone instead of waiting for them to arrive. And that night, for the first time since the mixer, she opened her wardrobe, pulled out the velvet dress again, and hung it where she could see it. She didn't call Ronan, didn't message, didn't confirm, but she booked the flight, packed her own bag, and when she arrived in Paris, someone was already waiting by the exit. No sign, no flowers, just presence. Ronan, and he smiled, not as a billionaire, not as a man who'd made a gesture, but as someone who finally had space to stay still. Paris was colder than she remembered. Not in temperature, just in feel. The streets held more space between people. The city moved slower, softer, like it knew how to exhale. Nera walked through it, wrapped in a navy trench coat, gloves tucked into her pocket, and her hands free. Ronan didn't rush her when she arrived. He didn't talk about plans, didn't offer tours or dinner reservations. He simply walked beside her, shoulder by shoulder, down Rue de Varenne. No holding hands, no performance, presence. That night, she sat across from him in a private garden dining room behind a candlelit restaurant in the 7th arrondissement. There were no menus. The chef knew them both by name. Ronan had once helped his family relocate during a flood season 3 years ago. Quiet generosity, no PR. Over roasted sea bass and lentils, they didn't talk about what happened back in Miami. They didn't revisit betrayal or pain. They talked about favorite bookstores, childhood dreams, the art of doing nothing. And when the check came, Ronan paid in silence. Nera placed her hand on his wrist before he withdrew it. "Thank you," she said. "Not for dinner, for letting stillness feel warm again." That night, they walked back to the hotel together, heels on cobblestone, hands occasionally brushing but never laced. He opened the lobby door for her, nodded once, and didn't follow her up. There was no question in his eyes, no invitation hidden in his tone. He simply said, "Sleep well," and stepped back into the street. She stood in the doorway for a long time, watching him disappear. Not because she felt abandoned, but because she wasn't used to being left. Respectfully. The next day, they didn't see each other until late afternoon. Nera had taken the morning for herself, visited a small perfume house tucked between a bakery and an art gallery, where a quiet woman helped her mix scents that reminded her of salt water and clean linen. She wore the new scent that evening when she stepped out. The driver knew where to go. This time, the ride was quiet but not uncertain. The car stopped outside a private residence at the edge of the Seine. Old stone, tall windows, wrought iron balconies above carved arches. She stepped out and was met by an attendant who didn't ask her name. He simply opened the door and led her inside. No crowd, no music, Just a room bathed in gold light with a single table set for two. Ronan stood at the far end, hands clasped behind his back. She crossed the room slowly. He met her halfway. "You came," he said. "You made it hard not to." He looked at her. Not hungrily, not possessively, just openly. "You're wearing black again," he said softly. She glanced down at the simple, sleeveless dress. "You sent me velvet last time. I figured this was my version of speaking back." He smiled. "You always speak clearly, even when you say nothing." They sat. The meal was light, small plates, quiet courses, nothing loud. The kind of dinner built not for appetite, but for atmosphere. Halfway through, he asked, "Do you know why I never pressed you?" "Because you understood. Because if I had, I would have lost you." She looked at him, unmoved. That honest? That simple? A pause. "Do you want something from me?" she asked. "Yes," he said. She didn't expect the answer to come so quickly, but he clarified. "I want you to know that I see you, that I value what you carry, that I'm not here for the pieces. I'm here for the peace." She felt her breath steady. "Because I don't need to be rescued," she whispered. "I know," he said. "But maybe it's time you were protected." There were no candles when they returned to her suite, no rose petals, no slow music, just open doors, low lamps, and trust. He walked her to the couch. She sat. He stayed standing. She tilted her head. "Do you want to stay?" He answered slowly. "I want to be where you feel safe." She looked down at her hands, then up at him. "Then sit." He did, and for an hour they said nothing. No kisses, no promises, no sudden declarations. Just quiet, shoulders touching, feet flat on the floor, two hearts learning to beat beside each other instead of for each other. She didn't ask him to stay the night, but when she woke the next morning, the velvet wrap from her chair had been draped gently across her blanket. She smiled. Because protection didn't always look like presence. Sometimes it looked like someone covering you, even when they weren't there. Neera returned to Miami 4 days later. No promises were made, no questions were asked. Ronan had walked her to the gate, placed his hand on the small of her back, and said just one thing: "Call me when you feel like peace is allowed to stay." She hadn't said goodbye. She simply nodded, boarded her flight, and never looked back during takeoff. Because this time, there was nothing she was running from. And for the first time in her life, nothing she was running toward either. The apartment smelled faintly of linen and citrus. The air was still. Her suitcase leaned quietly against the wall. She unpacked slowly. No rush, no emotional calm down. Each item folded and placed back in drawers. The velvet dress hung in her closet like a relic from a chapter she finally owned. She sat at the kitchen table that night, alone, wrapped in a sweater and socks, watching the ceiling fans spin gently. She didn't miss Paris. She missed how she felt in Paris, still wanted, not for what she gave, but for who she was. And that feeling hadn't stayed behind. It had returned with her, because Ronan hadn't carried it. She had. The following Monday, she walked into a meeting at headquarters, dressed in slate-grey wide-leg pants and a soft silk blouse. Her hair pulled back, clean and natural. No need for statement pieces. The room grew quiet when she entered, not because she demanded silence, but because she commanded it. Her team had grown again. 6 full-time consultants, 2 support staff, a logistics assistant, and an intern rotation program that bore her name. The department she led was now the firm's highest-grossing division for the year. When the director of operations stood to give quarterly remarks, he paused midway and looked at her. "I'd like to personally acknowledge Neera Colden. What she's built isn't just a department, it's a standard." Applause followed. Neera didn't smile wide. She simply nodded once and returned to her notes. Her work had never needed decoration. It spoke for itself. That afternoon, Mariel found her on the office balcony sipping a cool green tea. "So," she started slowly, "you left for Paris, came back glowing, and haven't said a word." I didn't go to glow, Neera said without looking up. I went to remember. Remember what? That I'm more than who someone failed to see. Mariel leaned on the railing beside her. I've known you years, she said, and this version of you, this still, strong, no apology version, this is the woman I wish I was at 30. Neera finally looked over, then become her. That night, Neera did something she hadn't done in months. She went for a walk after dinner, not to clear her head, not to escape the silence, but to enjoy it. She strolled down the marina trail, past where she and Ronan once sat quietly watching the waves. This time, she didn't stop, didn't sit. She kept moving. Because this part of her journey wasn't about returning to old benches. It was about walking forward with the memory of stillness in her pocket and the future in her hands. When she returned home, the lights were low. She dropped her keys gently in the bowl by the door, towed off her flats, and walked into the kitchen. And there, beside the fridge, leaned against the counter, Colvin. She froze, not because she was afraid, but because the sight of him no longer stirred anything, not even anger. He looked thinner, older, his eyes darker under the weight of nights spent pretending nothing had fallen apart. Don't get upset, he said quietly. I didn't mean to just show up. You always do that. He paused. I saw you on the news, he said. Your company got the global expansion deal. She said nothing. You used to tell me you weren't ambitious. I wasn't, she replied. I just stopped waiting for permission. He ran a hand through his hair. I was stupid, he said. Yes, I thought you'd always be there. I was. And then I wasn't. Silence. He took a step forward. I miss you. No, she said. You miss what you could take from me without asking. His breath caught. I didn't come here to win you back. I know. Then why aren't you telling me to leave? Because I want you to see what peace looks like after you lose it. He stood there, hollow, watching a woman he once owned without earning, now standing in full form, untouchable, unbothered, undeniable. Finally, she turned away. I don't hate you, Colvin. I just forgot what it felt like to love you, and I don't want to remember. He stood there, stunned. Then he left, door closing behind him like punctuation, final, soft, certain. Neera leaned against the counter, her hands steady, her heart untouched. She pulled out her phone and opened her messages. There was only one name in her recent calls list that mattered. She tapped it, let it ring once. And when he answered, she didn't say hello. She just whispered, "Come back. I've made room." The door clicked softly as Ronan stepped into Neera's apartment. He didn't speak right away. He didn't touch her. She stepped back to let him in, and he paused in the entryway as if scanning the air, not for danger, but for her energy. The silence between them wasn't cold. It was listening. She had made space, and he could feel it. I came straight from the airport, he said quietly. She nodded, taking in the sight of him. His coat was folded over his arm, his shirt slightly creased, his eyes, tired but still searching. You didn't sleep, she said. I slept, he replied, but not well. She closed the door behind him. He didn't ask to stay. He didn't assume he could. He simply followed her to the kitchen, where a single lamp cast a soft gold light across the room. Neera poured tea, 1 cup. Then, without a word, she poured another. Ronan took it with both hands. They stood by the counter, facing each other, nothing between them but time. You said you'd call when you made room, he said after a few sips. I did. Is this it? She nodded. I've cleared the noise. He studied her face. How long did it take? Too long. And now, I'm not rushing anything. I just don't want to miss what's in front of me anymore. Ronan placed his cup down and stepped closer, not forcefully, not presumptively. He didn't close the space between them entirely. He left enough for her to decide. Do you know what I admire most about you? He asked. Neera looked up. What? You never begged to be seen. You just existed fully and waited for the right eyes. Her lips parted slightly. not to respond, to breathe. She moved first, a slow step forward, then another. When she reached him, her hand rose to his chest, not a touch filled with urgency, but one that simply rested. Testing the rhythm of where she now stood, Ronan didn't pull her closer, but he didn't move away. Neera tilted her head slightly, her eyes holding his. "Are you here for tonight?" she asked quietly. "Or are you here to build something with me?" His jaw tightened slightly. Not in conflict, in restraint. "I'm not good at rushing," he said. "Good. Because I want to know what your days feel like, what your silence means, what mornings look like when you're not holding your breath." She swallowed. "Then stay." "Tonight?" "No," she said. "Stay. In whatever way lets you learn all of those things." They didn't kiss. Not yet. They sat on the living room floor, barefoot, backs against the couch. The tea grew cold. The night stretched longer. Neera told him about the moment she knew her marriage was over, not when she saw the other woman, but when she realized Colvin had stopped listening to her silence. Ronan listened, not with nods or commentary, but with stillness, and when she fell quiet, he didn't fill the space. He simply placed his hand near hers, not touching, but close, and when she leaned her head to the side, toward his shoulder, he stayed completely still, letting her feel the safety that came from someone who didn't reach before being invited. By the time the clock neared 1 a.m., Neera stood. "Spare toothbrush is in the guest drawer," she said. Ronan stood slowly. "You sure?" She nodded. "I'm sure." He moved to the guest room without another word. She returned to her room. No tension, no regret. And that night, both of them slept better than they had in months. In separate rooms, but under the same roof, because sometimes presence is more intimate than touch. The next morning, Neera woke to the smell of coffee. She stepped into the kitchen, still in her robe, and found him standing by the stove, wearing one of her spare hoodies, sleeves slightly short on him. "You drink black or with almond milk?" he asked. "Both," she said, smiling. He poured it quietly, handed her the mug, and leaned against the counter. They didn't need to talk about the night before. They didn't need to define anything. The stillness between them was no longer hesitant. It was mutual. They spent the day at the marina, walking, talking about childhood mischief, favorite flavors, travel moments. Not every story was deep. Some were short, silly, tangents. But none of it felt like filler. Neera laughed. Not politely, genuinely. At a joke he made about nearly getting arrested for climbing a library roof at 14. Ronan listened when she shared about losing her mother at 19. He didn't reach for her hand. She didn't offer it. But they moved in sync. Their steps matched. Their pauses mirrored. The world didn't shift for them. But they had shifted within it. By sunset, they returned home. No dramatic declarations, no emotional highs. Just one question from Neera. "Dinner?" He answered with a small shrug. "If you'll let me chop." The knife moved steadily under Ronan's hand as he chopped vegetables. Precise cuts, no waste, no rush. Neera leaned against the counter across from him, sleeves rolled to her elbows, peeling garlic one clove at a time. It wasn't romantic in the typical sense. There was no music, no candlelight. But something about the silence, the shared task, the subtle way their movements aligned, felt more intimate than any scripted date. She passed him the peeled garlic without being asked. He added it to the pan like he already knew she would. When the food was ready, grilled shrimp, roasted vegetables, soft rice seasoned with lemon and herbs, they sat on floor cushions in the living room, eating from shallow bowls, knees loosely touching. The television stayed off. Instead, they watched each other, spoke in pieces, laughed softly between bites. "Were you always like this?" she asked at one point. "Like what?" Still, gentle, unbothered. He smiled faintly. "No. I used to rush, push, control. What changed? I lost someone." Neera set her bowl down slowly. "Not to death," he clarified. "Just to my silence. I thought being calm was enough. I didn't realize presence and communication are different things." She nodded, quietly. "And now?" "Now," I ask. I wait. And I try not to assume stillness means understanding. She looked at him, her gaze softer than before. "That's rare in a man like you. Then maybe I've lived long enough to value rare." They cleaned up the dishes together. She washed. He dried. Neither felt the need to perform closeness. Their rhythm was quiet, natural. By the time the dishes were done, Neera had forgotten how long they'd been on their feet. Ronan leaned against the fridge and crossed his arms. "You always build spaces like this?" She turned to him. "Like what?" "Warm, calming, open. I've learned that if I want peace, I can't decorate my home with reminders of noise." He held her gaze. "So I'm not a reminder?" She hesitated. "No," she said. "You're a mirror. You show me who I am when I'm not trying." Ronan didn't respond immediately. He stepped forward, stopping in front of her. Not close enough to press her. Close enough to be honest. "Then let me stay in that reflection." She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. But she stepped aside to let him walk past her, toward the hallway, toward the guest room, toward the quiet she had learned to share. And he went, without trying to touch her, without asking for more, because that was his way, and hers. That night, she sat at her desk after he fell asleep. She pulled open her old journal and flipped to the page where she once listed the kind of love she wanted. A man who listened, a man who didn't rush touch, a man who noticed when she wasn't speaking, and asked why. A man who didn't compete with her stillness but walked beside it. She drew a line through each bullet, not because she'd stopped wanting them, but because someone had finally matched them. She didn't cry. She didn't smile like a girl in a movie. She just closed the journal and turned off the lamp. And when she walked past the guest room, she paused for a second, long enough to hear his breathing, even, slow, grounded. And then she went to bed, not alone, even if in the next room. The following week was unremarkable on the surface. They worked. They cooked. They moved like people who had known each other for longer than they had. No big moments. No grand shifts. But Neera started noticing little things. He always left space at the table for her journal. Always filled her water glass halfway, never full, just the way she liked it. Always stood to the side when she needed to be seen. One morning she asked, "Do you do this for every woman?" "No," he said without blinking. "I do this because you don't ask for it." And she knew that was true. One afternoon, they sat on the couch reading. 2 separate books. No conversation. Ronan reached for his coffee. Neera, without looking, slid it an inch closer to him without losing her place on the page. He didn't thank her. She didn't acknowledge it. And somehow, it was perfect. That night, he didn't go to the guest room. He didn't ask either. She had already left the door open, and when he stepped inside, she turned down the sheet beside her. They lay side by side in the quiet, not touching, not tangled, not forced. Their hands found each other somewhere in the middle of the bed. Fingers brushing, breaths sinking, hearts not racing, but steady. She turned her face toward him in the dark. "Are you afraid of ruining this?" "Yes," he whispered. "But I'm more afraid of missing it." She leaned closer, and this time, she kissed him, not for show, not for reassurance, but because she wanted to, because she was ready, because stillness had finally found a home. The morning after their first kiss, Neera didn't wake with butterflies. She woke with something firmer, more grounded, clarity. She turned slowly to her right. Ronan was still asleep, his arm draped across the pillow between them. His face relaxed, years younger without the weight he wore during the day. She didn't feel possessed. She didn't feel branded by the moment. She felt her own, still, whole, and not erased by what they had shared. She slipped out of bed gently and moved to the kitchen. Tea, not coffee. Lemon, not milk. The rhythm of her day returned, unchanged. That was what mattered most. Being with him hadn't made her vanish. It had simply made space for her to be more. When Ronan stepped in, barefoot, shirt half-buttoned, she didn't rush into small talk. He moved to her side silently and reached for the second mug she had already poured. They stood in parallel. He took a sip, then asked, "Still okay?" She nodded. "Still me." He smiled. "Good." At work, Neera sat in the glass-walled corner of her office, reviewing a partnership proposal when Mariel peeked in. "I've been holding this," she said, sliding a manila envelope across the desk. "It came while you were gone. From corporate." Neera raised a brow. "Good or bad?" "I didn't read it," Mariel said. "But they don't use these unless it's serious." Neera flipped it open. Inside, a contract. Offer of promotion. Title: Senior Executive Director, Global Strategy Operations. She scanned the details. Expanded control, bigger team, travel between cities. It was more than a title. It was power. Earned power. She didn't feel surprised. She felt calm. "Are you taking it?" Mariel asked. Neera closed the folder slowly. "I don't need the role to define me," she said. "But I think it's time my work carried my name." That weekend, she invited Ronan to North Point, not to impress him, to show him where she'd first found herself again. They drove in silence for most of the way, the coast unraveling beside them, sunlight drifting through the windshield. When they pulled up to the gate, she took the key from her bag and unlocked it herself. Ronan stepped back and watched her. "First time you brought me here, I thought it was your gift," she said. "Now I realize it was my decision." She stepped in. He followed. But this time, he didn't lead. She did. They cooked. They walked along the cliffs. They said little, until she stopped by the overlook and asked, "Do you think love should always be this quiet?" "No," he said honestly, "only when the people in it know what noise cost them." She turned to him. "Then maybe we're the right kind of quiet." His reply was a kiss. Soft, long, not rushed. That night, they sat by the fire wrapped in a shared throw, feet bare against the wood floors. Neera looked into the flame, voice soft. "I used to think love meant being chosen loudly, being fought for. And now I know. Love doesn't have to yell if it knows where home is." Ronan didn't say anything for a while. Then he took her hand. "And where's home now?" She looked over at him. "Myself," she said. He nodded once. "And maybe also here," she added quietly, "with you beside me." They didn't need more that night. No labels, no declarations, just a fireplace, two steady hearts, and a woman who had finally remembered her own name, and a man who never tried to change it. Neera stood barefoot on the balcony of North Point the next morning, a robe wrapped around her waist and a mug warm in her hands. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, quiet, consistent, unconcerned with yesterday. It moved the same way she had learned to, without asking permission. Behind her, she heard the sliding door open. Ronan stepped out, hair still tousled, shirt pulled over half his chest. He didn't say good morning. He simply stood beside her, soaking in the same view, silence between them as natural as breath. "You always wake before the sun?" he asked eventually. "Not always. Only when I have peace to protect." He looked at her. "And now?" "I don't guard it anymore," she said. "I live in it." They drove back to the city that afternoon, not speaking much. But nothing was missing. In the quiet, they reached decisions, unspoken but understood. They wouldn't rush, wouldn't define what didn't need naming, wouldn't perform their closeness for the world, but they would keep showing up. And that was enough. Neera returned to work with a new title, a new office, and a door plaque. That read only her full name, no credentials, no abbreviations. When her team congratulated her, she thanked them with warmth, but without fanfare. "I earned it because of how we built together," she said. "So we'll keep building." She didn't post about the promotion, didn't pose for a photo, didn't tell Colvin, though she suspected he already knew. The city moved on, and so did she. She walked differently now, not faster, just firmer. People began responding to her with more care. Some apologized more quickly. Some asked for guidance. Some simply watched the way she entered a room and made space without demanding it. She didn't correct them, didn't explain herself, because clarity doesn't perform. It simply stands. One evening, while walking through a gallery she had once visited alone during harder months, she paused in front of a new piece. It was a painting, 2 chairs facing the ocean, unoccupied, still, not lonely, just ready. She stared for a long time. When she turned to leave, Ronan was standing a few feet away. He hadn't told her he'd come, hadn't texted. He was just there. She didn't speak. She walked toward him, and when she reached him, he held out his hand without words. She took it, because this time, no explanation was needed. That weekend, he cooked for her, nothing elaborate, just pasta, olive oil, and fresh basil from a pot he'd grown outside his apartment. She watched him move, quiet, intentional, no wasted effort. "This is your way of showing up," she said, as he handed her a plate. "It's the only way I know how," he replied. She nodded. "Good," she said, "because I don't need more noise." That night, after dinner, they danced. No music, just bare feet on cool floors, arms loosely around shoulders, fingers curled at the back of a neck. It wasn't choreographed. It wasn't captured. It just happened. And in the middle of that moment, Nira knew she hadn't just survived betrayal. She had rewritten her life, one still moment at a time. Colvin first heard the whispers at a private networking brunch downtown. He was 2 tables away from a group of media execs when he caught his own name, muted but clear enough to sting. His wife. She's the one leading the new global partnership rollout. Nira? Yeah, she used to be married to him. Shame he let that one go. He didn't look up, didn't interrupt, didn't defend. He just sat there, face still, fork resting mid-air, realizing for the first time how much of the room she now quietly owned. It wasn't revenge. She hadn't burned bridges, hadn't exposed him, hadn't posted a word, but her success had become undeniable, and he hadn't built it. He couldn't claim it, couldn't even touch it. Later that evening, Colvin stood outside his high-rise balcony, scotch in hand, replaying the night Nira had stood in their old kitchen and said, "I forgot what it felt like to love you, and I don't want to remember." He hadn't understood it then. But now, as her name appeared in industry write-ups and her photo circulated in private boardroom summaries, he understood all of it. She had left, not loudly, but completely. Meanwhile, Nira wasn't thinking about him at all. She sat in a dim-lit lounge at a client dinner, wearing a cream blouse and tailored black slacks, listening. As the CEO of a European travel firm asked her how she built such consistent excellence across her team, she answered thoughtfully, never raising her voice. No jargon, no bravado, just clarity. "You don't seem like the type to chase attention," the CEO remarked. "I don't chase anything that would disappear if I stopped clapping," she replied. He laughed, nodding in respect. Across the room, Ronan watched quietly, not with possessiveness, pride. She caught his eyes. He didn't interrupt. She didn't need him to. When the dinner ended, he joined her outside, where her car was waiting. "That answer you gave about attention?" he said. "You weren't always that sharp with your words." "No," she agreed, "but I've been sharpening them in silence for years." They walked together for a while along the boardwalk. No destination, just dusk, just them. "Your name's everywhere now," he said. "I know." "How does it feel?" "Like I earned it," she said, "but also like I never needed it to be loud to matter." He nodded. "And him?" Ronan asked, carefully. "Colvin?" she asked, then shrugged. "He's a lesson I no longer need to repeat." Ronan chuckled softly. "That's a powerful kind of closure." "It's not closure," she said. "It's evolution." When they reached her car, she paused before getting in. "You never tried to outshine him," she said, looking at Ronan. "I didn't need to." She smiled. "Exactly." Then she leaned forward and kissed him. Slow, certain. Not for effect, just to confirm what already existed. When she stepped into the car, she didn't wave goodbye, because nothing between them felt like it needed to end. The next day, she opened her inbox to an internal company memo. Her team had ranked first globally for the second quarter. She read it, acknowledged it, and forwarded it with a short note. "We don't win because we speak the loudest. We win because we move with purpose." Her team replied with simple emojis. Nothing dramatic, nothing performative. But that's what she had built. People who didn't need noise to feel value. That afternoon, she received a text from an unknown number. "I was a fool. I know that now. If you ever want closure, or even just honesty, you have it. No defenses, no lies. Just me. Colvin." She stared at the message for a full minute. Then she deleted it. Because closure doesn't require confrontation. Sometimes, peace is the reply. A week later, Neera entered the last boardroom on her list. This wasn't a client meeting. This was the acquisition table. Her firm was absorbing a luxury hospitality brand, once deemed unreachable. They were seated in a glass tower in New York, 30 floors up, winter sun casting sharp streaks across the dark marble table. Neera walked in late. Not by accident. She allowed others to arrive first. When she stepped in, calm, soft-spoken, completely composed, every man in that room stood up. Not because she asked, but because they had learned her name meant something now. Power didn't announce her. It moved when she did. One of the advisors, grey suit, older, seasoned, tilted his head. "You were once part of Drexler Holdings, yes?" he asked casually. The table went still. Neera turned her face toward him. "No, I was married to someone who ran one of their real estate branches. I was never part of it. I built around it." She didn't smile. She didn't blink. The room understood her reply. After the meeting, the press took their shots. Cameras flashed. Flashes of her shaking hands, staying poised, delivering one of the firmest expansion deals of the year. Some online headlines still mentioned her ex-husband, but most no longer did, because the world had moved on to who she became, not who she used to stand next to. That night, back in Chicago, Ronan was the one who opened the door. She dropped her keys in the dish by his entryway, kicked off her heels. He handed her a bowl of warm soup before she asked. Didn't ask how the meeting went, didn't mention the headlines, didn't bring up Colvin. She sat cross-legged on his couch, hair pulled back, clean skin, no jewelry. He sat beside her. Quietly, after a long pause, she said, "He messaged again." Ronan didn't look surprised. "What did you say?" "I didn't." He nodded. "That's something. I don't want him back, Ronan. I don't even want to be angry anymore. But sometimes, the part that hurts is realizing I wasted so much of myself trying to be understood." Ronan reached for her hand. "Then don't explain anything ever again." She looked at him, and in that moment, he became the safest room she'd ever entered. Days passed. Then, weeks. Neera's name began appearing on invites, keynote events, think tanks, advisory panels. She turned most of them down. She didn't want the stage. She had built something more powerful than applause. She had built herself. One evening, while wrapping up paperwork, Ronan approached her with a single question. "Would you ever want to move again?" She looked up, eyes curious. "Move? Not because you're running, but because you're choosing where?" He smiled. "Doesn't matter. Just somewhere that feels like our choice." That night, as they stood outside watching the early snow fall, Neera whispered, "I used to want the world to see what he lost. But now, I just want to protect what I've found." Ronan kissed her temple. "You've already done both." At a cafe across town, Colvin sat alone, sipping bitter coffee and reading yet another industry blog that mentioned her. He didn't reach out again. He knew silence was her last message, the one she meant, and the one he finally received. In a world full of noise, Neera had built a legacy in whispers. One room, one win, one quiet truth at a time. You saw her pain. You watched her stay quiet when most would scream. You watched her lose with dignity, then rise with power. Neera didn't chase revenge. She didn't demand justice. She became the proof. In a world that expected her to collapse, she chose something louder than noise: peace. And when someone finally saw her not for her silence, but for her strength, she didn't hesitate. So ask yourself, who are you when no one claps for you? Who stays when you stop performing loyalty? What would your life look like if you stopped proving and started choosing? If Nira's story moved you, drop a comment. Let someone know they're not alone. Subscribe for more stories where quiet power wins. Like this video if dignity matters more than drama. And share this with someone who needs to see what real worth looks like. You don't need to yell to win. You just need to know who you are and walk away when it's time. We'll see you in the next story.